This is the BYD Sealion 6, a new plug-in hybrid SUV from the Chinese brand, which offers almost 100 Ks of EV driving range and undercuts some of its rivals by tens of thousands of dollars when it comes to plug-in hybrid SUVs. So, is there anything that's bad about it? Well, there are some things that could be better, but this is one of the most impressive newcomers that I've ever driven. Yep. That might seem like a big call, but this is a very, very good thing. Stick around and you'll find out why. If you've already subscribed, thanks very much. If you haven't, please do. And let's get to it, shall we? This is a value-packed plug-in hybrid SUV. In fact, it's the best value plug-in hybrid SUV on the market at this size. It really is bloody brilliant. I'm going to tell you some alternatives you might want to check out, but you might not need to, considering what you're getting for your money in this vehicle. The entry-level version is this one here. It's called the Dynamic, and it starts at $48,990 plus on-road costs. And you might be thinking, well, that's a new brand, a new type of technology for that brand. That seems a bit pricey, but you are getting so much stuff for your money that you might think twice about that. Things like LED lights all around the car. You've got keyless entry and push button start, 19-inch alloy wheels, an electric tailgate, a panoramic sunroof, a 15.6-inch touchscreen media system which rotates. It's also got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's got sat-nav. It's got a digital instrument display for the driver. It's got fake leather trim, but it's a pretty nice looking trim in my opinion. Some people don't like the color combos on offer, but I think it actually looks a little bit more reserved than some of the other BYDs out there. There's electric driver's seat adjustment, electric passenger seat adjustment. Those front seats are also heated and cooled. There's climate control. There's plenty of USB ports. It's got vehicle to load charging, and it seems to stack up really, really well for this base model car. And if you're looking for something that looks a little bit different and has a bit more power, well, it doesn't look any different, but does have more power. The all-wheel drive premium version, it's $52,990, so only $4,000 more, but it adds heaps and heaps of extra grunt, and it also adds a head-up display as well, and another interior option that you can choose if you wish as well. But hey, $48,990 and $52,990, that is tens of thousands of dollars less than the equivalently specified versions from other SUV brands. So let's talk about some alternatives and whether you should consider them or not. The price is right with this car, there's no doubt about that, but if you are not necessarily as concerned about your budget, there are some alternatives that you might want to go and check out. The Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid is one of those. Now, I test drove the entry-level ES grade, which is basic bare bones fleet motoring essentially, and it's more than $50,000, so more than this car, and didn't have anywhere near as much equipment or wow factor to it. In fact, to get an equivalently spec'd version of the Outlander, you're looking at almost $25,000 more than this. So it doesn't make that much sense from that perspective, but in other ways, it's still a very compelling option because it offers plenty of space, plenty of practicality, and real world efficiency on its side as well, and heaps of EV driving range too. So it could still be the right car for you, but maybe you need to spend a little bit more to get the best version that you can. Now, there's also the Cupra Formentor plug-in hybrid. It's also a little bit more expensive than this, and it does have wow factor when it comes to the design. I actually think that it's one of the best looking cars in this segment, and there are a bunch of other Formentors available as well, performance oriented versions, and in fact the dynamism of the plug-in hybrid is what makes it stand out because it is far more of a driver's car compared to this, and if that's what you're after, then maybe the Formentor could be the better choice. And finally, if you don't want to plug in, there are a couple of other options out there obviously. The first one is the one that I always recommend to someone who's looking for a mid-size SUV that's good on fuel. It's the Toyota RAV4 hybrid. I think that it does have a really nice livability to that car, and it is real world efficient. You're going to see about 5 or 6 litres per 100 Ks across mixed driving, and that does make for a pretty easy living experience and pretty easy on the wallet as well when it comes to that. But the prices for the RAV4 are still pretty high compared to this. And another option you might want to check out is the Nissan X-Trail e-Power. I'm not a huge fan of the way that car drives, but I can see how it stacks up if you are after an electrified drive experience that doesn't necessarily require you to plug in at night. It is a little bit expensive too compared to this, and that's the theme of this whole review. This car, massive, massive value. The Sealion 6 is pretty typical in terms of mid-sized SUV dimensions. It's just over 4.7 metres in length. It is strictly a 5-seater, and for some people it might be a little bit conservative in terms of its styling. I know that there are people out there who have criticised this vehicle because it is a little bit safe in terms of the design. It's not as outlandish as some of the other edgy looking competitors that it's got, but actually I think that it looks pretty good. It's not necessarily exactly my cup of tea, particularly the rear end. I'm just not so sold on this whole back section, which does look a little bit slabby, but look, it does have a pretty interesting boot situation going on. So let's take a look. All right, so all versions come with an electric tailgate, and yes, you can see for yourself, it is a little bit of a smaller boot compared to some of the other SUVs in this segment. You'll see the litres of cargo capacity on offer on your screen now, and obviously that's less than what you're getting in a RAV4 or something like that, and it looks visually smaller as well. It's got a pretty limited gap between those wheel arch housings, which is something you might want to keep in mind. And there is that intrusion across that back section of the seats too. So if you do need to fold the seats down, it's not going to be as usable as some other SUVs in this segment. And also there's no quick release tabs in the boot to lower the seat backs down. So you have to come around to both of the rear seats and pull these little tabs to fold those seats down. And also, look, you've got this charging bag here. So this has got a charge cable in it for portable charging if that's what you need to do. And underneath the boot floor, you will not find a spare, but you will find a tyre repair kit and a big piece of styrofoam stuff. And obviously there's some other elements going on underneath the body of the car, but hey, it's not as usable as it could be. Likewise, you've got these storage sections on the sides of the boot, and you've got a light there, but there is no shopping bag hooks or anything like that. So you might just want to keep in mind that it's not quite as practical an SUV as some of the others in this class, not quite as thoughtful when it comes to the boot space either. Okay, so this is what it's like to sit in the driver's seat of the BYD Sealion 6. It is very similar to some of the other BYD models in the range, and that's no bad thing in my opinion because, well, there are some high-tech features in here. You've got this digital instrument display for the driver. There's plenty of info available on this screen as well, so you can siphon through a few different menus if you wish. You can even control the fan speed for the aircon using this little set of buttons on the steering wheel here. And yes, you can also adjust the temperature through that, so you don't have to muck around going through the screen if you don't want to. And for me, that is a huge advantage. And it does make for a more livable experience because at times this screen can be a little bit overwhelming in terms of what you have to deal with. I'm going to turn that off so it's not quite as noisy from the wind, from the air conditioning. Yes, you do have dual zone climate control, and no, you don't have any buttons or dials down here to control things with. So it is a little bit of a learning curve to get to terms with the controls in this car, but I don't think that it's necessarily as difficult as it might otherwise have been because you do have those controls on that driver info screen. Now you've also got controls for your seat heating and ventilation through the screen as well. So that is a little bit finicky. If you had buttons down here, it might be a little bit better, but you don't. So you just have to deal with it. And yes, you've also got windshield and side mirror heating there as well. So you can turn that on and off if you need it. I needed it this morning because it was bloody cold out there. Now, also on this screen, you've got an air purification system too. So if you want to make sure that everything's as crispy clear as it can be on the inside, you can do that. Yes, you've also got a built-in sat-nav system in all versions of this car, and it is very, very snappy and very quick to operate this system. And the menus and stuff to interact with the car is not too bad. It's a little bit fiddly. As you can see, I went to El Jannah the other day. Love that chicken, by the way. And yes, it does have a few other really good features in here, like you can check where the nearest public EV chargers are as well. So that gives you an idea of where they are, what sort of charging options they've got available to you, and whether you can get some food there as well. I like that element of this system too. Now, if you're not into using the built-in sat-nav, you can just use your Apple CarPlay, because there's wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto as well. It's pretty quick to react, and it's very, very easy to get your head around. One thing I will say though is that this screen is maybe a little bit dull at times, in daylight in particular, and when there's light shining in, as you can sort of see for yourself, it can be just a little bit reflective. But hey, if you want, you can also pivot the screen so that it's in portrait layout. Not really sure why you would. I think that it's an interesting gimmick to have, but it doesn't necessarily add that much to the experience in my opinion. I just keep it in the landscape layout because I do think that it's a better way of interacting. Well, it's the only way you can interact with Apple CarPlay in this car. Now, there are other menus upon menus upon menus upon menus in this car, plenty of them in fact. You've got heaps of vehicle settings and adjustments that you can make. You want to go and have a play with those things in the showroom if you are going to take a look at one of these cars, because there's heaps and heaps of different settings that you can play with. Yes, you've got regen braking that you can adjust, you've got state of charge settings as well, and also you've got a display there to show you that you've still got 25% of battery pretty much always in this car, because it won't let it get too depleted. Also, your ADAS systems are in here as well, so your advanced driver assistance features. Things that you might want to adjust include the driving assistance elements like traffic sign recognition. It is a little bit fiddly and it can be a little bit annoying at times, but I actually left it on and it was okay in this instance. The emergency lane keeping I find to be a little bit too pushy at times, especially when you've got the intelligent cruise control going. But hey, it's all stuff that you will choose your own desire factor with, because it is a pretty adjustable drive experience. But just like a lot of the other cars in this segment, you have to do a lot of those changes if you want to every single time you drive the car. So look, for the most part, I think that it's pretty usable, this screen, and it will take a bit of learning otherwise. What's good about this design of this cabin, I'll just zoom back out a little bit, is you've got twin wireless phone chargers. Yes, there's two down there, so you won't have to fight with whoever's your front seat passenger over who gets the wireless charger. And there's also a couple of USB ports down here. Let me just show you those. And a 12 volt as well, and a decent little storage tray under that transmission section as well. Now, yes, that's your gear selector, that's your starter for the car. You've got your drive mode selection button there. The all-wheel drive model gets a few extra drive modes that you might appreciate for off-roady style situations, but it's not really an off-roader. That one there is your EV and hybrid mode selector, and you might want to play with that a little bit when you're trying to get the best out of this powertrain. You've got a pair of cup holders there, a covered center console bin as well, and this is pretty neat. This is a little glass smasher if you need it, and also a seatbelt cutter. So if you were to be stuck in a car that was submerged in water and you couldn't get out, you've got that in there, which is actually pretty handy. There's bottle holders in the doors, and there's orange trim, which you might not love. I actually think that it looks kind of interesting. I think my formal in year 10 had orange and brown as the theme, and so it's sort of bringing back memories for me. But I actually like the design of this cabin. I think it's a really modern and technical feeling place to sit, but also very practical and very thoughtful and very usable and really quite impressive in my opinion. So let's see if the back seat space is good as well. All right, so this is the view from the back seat. With this seat set for my driving position, I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot tall. I've got enough knee room in front of my knees to be pretty comfortable. Foot room's maybe a little bit tight with my driving position selected. If you've got someone who likes to sit up a bit higher, it might be different. But yes, it's still a little bit of a knees up position. It's not too bad though. I'll flip the camera around so you can see headroom. Pretty good. Anyone 6'3", 6'4" might find that their head is a little bit closer to the ceiling than they might like, but there is this big glass roof, which does add to the niceness factor in here, because you do have this dark headliner, which otherwise makes it feel a bit gloomy. But hey, I think that the back seat experience is not too bad. You can fit 3 adults across the back if you need to. There is also ISOFIX points in the window seats and top tether points for all 3 seats as well. There's a flip down armrest with cup holders if you've just got 2 in the back or 1 in the back. And you've also got bottle holders in the doors. There's map pockets on the seat backs. You've got directional air vents there as well. And down below, there's a USB A and C port, and also a little storage section there where you might want to put your phone while it is on the juice. So yeah, backseat experience really is pretty good in this SUV. Very impressive indeed. BYD calls its plug-in hybrid technology DMI for dual mode intelligent. And look, I think that it is a pretty smart powertrain. It's got a 1.5 litre non-turbocharged petrol engine in this entry-level front-wheel drive version. That obviously combines with a single-speed transmission and an electric motor and battery pack. More details on the battery stuff coming up. And the outputs are pretty decent. Not necessarily amazing, but definitely decent enough for this class. But it is a heavy car. You'll see the weight on your screen now, and as a result, the 0 to 100 time is not necessarily mind-blowing, but it is still pretty quick for this segment. 8.5 seconds is not too bad for a standard SUV in this segment. But if you step up to the all-wheel drive version, which adds an extra electric motor at the rear axle and pumps up the power and torque figures to, well, much higher levels, and it also adds about 150 kilos of weight, but you'll see the 0 to 100 time on your screen now for the all-wheel drive version, so it might stack up better for you if that's what you want. I think I would spend the extra $4 grand to get into that all-wheel drive one, because it does seem to make a bit more sense, and it will be obviously a bit faster as well. And hey, when it comes to towing, there's an advantage with the all-wheel drive as well. The front-wheel drive can only do 750 kilos, whereas the all-wheel drive has a bit more towing capacity up its sleeve when it comes to brake towing. All-wheel drive for the win, hey? On the passenger side of this vehicle is where you'll find your petrol filler cap, and as you can see here, 95 RON premium unleaded is required. And on the driver's side is where you will find your electric filling location. So yes, it does have AC and DC charging. You'll see the AC maximum charge rate on your screen, and that does mean a pretty quick charge time overnight from a wall box or something like that. There's also DC charging at a maximum rate of 18 kilowatts, so it's pretty limited in terms of the fast charging option, but hey, it's good enough for if you're out on the road and you want to just continue your journey in EV mode with a quick top up. And also it does have a BYD Blade LFP battery system fitted to both versions of this car. The all-wheel drive model has just over 80 kilometers of claimed driving range, while the front-wheel drive model here has just over 90 Ks of claimed driving range. And another good thing to note, it does have vehicle-to-load capability at a maximum of 10 amps, so you can run some household appliances or something like that. And BYD also offers a wall box included when you purchase this vehicle, and there's also a portable charge cable for emergency charging as well. So all of those things stack up really well, and so does the fact that the claimed driving range for petrol and electric combined is more than 1,000 kilometers for this vehicle. Rightio, setting off in the BYD Sealion 6 in EV mode to see how many kilometers of EV driving range we can actually get out of this car. Now, it is very cold outside. It's only 4 degrees right now as I'm leaving home. And it's saying that I've got 85 kilometers of EV driving range. And so for the first part of this test, I'm just gonna drive until basically the battery runs out of juice, and we'll see how far we actually get. So I've reset the trip computer. I know where I'm going, and the roads will include a mix of slower speed stuff, 80k an hour zone, and also 100 zone as well. So 110 zone in fact. So basically I'll come back to you when the battery has gotten to the point where it kicks the engine into life, which apparently is about 25% remaining of the full battery. So I don't think I'll get 85 Ks of EV range. I might get 60 or 70, and then it might kick over to hybrid, but we'll find out when we get to it in a sec. But before we get there, I just want to call out the fact that you can have this little readout on the screen showing you the distance in terms of EV driving range, or you can have it as a state of charge display, so your percentage of battery range remaining. So I've got it set on Ks because I want to know how many Ks we're doing. And also I'll just mention that for the entire time I've been driving this car, I've had the regen braking set into the highest mode. It's still not a very assertive regen braking system. It's not a single pedal drive mode by any stretch of the imagination. As I'll show you, I'll just take my foot off the accelerator here and it just basically continues to propel itself along. But it is actually getting 3 kilowatts of regen back according to the little display on the screen there. So yep, not necessarily the most assertive with the regen, but that's the case with a lot of BYD products, including the full EV models. Righto, so I'll get back to you once the battery is depleted and tell you how many Ks I got. And I'll also tell you a bit more about the car then too. All right, so just to bring you up to speed, I've just completed the 83rd kilometre of this EV drive, and the car has now kicked over to a hybrid mode, despite the fact that I keep trying to select it back to EV to try and use as much of the battery as possible. It is overriding me a little bit at times because it knows that it doesn't have enough battery left. So once it gets down to like 10 kilometers of EV range remaining, it will kick over to a hybrid mode. So I have depleted as much of the battery as it will let me do in a mix of different driving. So I went, like I said, down the freeway. I went on an arterial road at 80 k's an hour, did a bunch of urban driving in a couple of smaller towns, and then also a bit of the drudgery of day-to-day sort of stop-start traffic, and then also this country road which I'm driving along right now. And yes, I got 83 kilometers of EV driving out of it. So in a sec, once I've completed the 100 Ks, I'll tell you what the readout says for the first 100 kilometers for fuel consumption as well, because there's a trip computer on the screen here which can tell me that. On the Energy Manager screen here, there's another display which shows you that it won't really let the battery capacity get below 25%. So it is kind of interesting that it wants to keep 25% of the battery in reserve, which is still a pretty decent capacity when you've still got, 13 Ks that you could potentially use of EV driving range. So it's just a very intriguing way of doing it, but obviously a very efficient way of doing it too. And over this drive, I've had the temperature set to like 22 or 23 degrees, had the seat heater on for a little while. It's still only 12 degrees outside, and that's not ideal EV driving conditions. And I am really surprised. I mean, to get 83 kilometers of driving range out of this vehicle in these conditions is really, really impressive. And I know that the claim is higher. You'll see the EV claim on your screen now for the battery range, but look, I am really impressed that you can get that many kilometers of EV driving out of this plug-in hybrid. It's exceptionally good. And now we are driving in hybrid or HEV mode as it shows up on the dashboard. And look, yes, it is noticeable that the engine is running because you can sort of hear it in the background, but the shift between EV and hybrid is imperceptible to the naked ear pretty much. Unless you have really finely tuned hearing, you won't really notice that the engine kicks into life. But there's just a slight little vibration as well that you pick up. But honestly, it's super duper smooth in the way that it switches between EV and hybrid too. So I've just completed the 100 kilometers that I set out to do just to see what sort of EV and fuel consumption numbers you can expect. So 83 kilometers of EV driving range achieved, which is very, very good, just a little bit less than the claim. And in terms of the fuel consumption number that shows up on the screen, it's saying 1.9 litres per 100 for that first 100 Ks. So that's the crucial thing when it comes to a plug-in hybrid. Once you've depleted the batteries, you're never gonna see that sort of really low number again, because it's gonna have to work more as a petrol electric car rather than an electric petrol car, if that makes any sense. So look, I think that it's still a pretty decent number, 1.9 for the first 100. And because of the magic of movie making, I'm going to show you on screen what I got for the next 100 now. So tell me what you think about that in the comments. So obviously the car was driving more as a hybrid on that drive. There was no EV mode selected. It was just in hybrid. And yeah, tell me what you reckon about it. Righto, so that's the efficiency and fuel consumption stuff out of the way. Let's talk about the driving experience more generally. And I actually think that this is one of the most surprising cars to drive that I've experienced in 2024. It just seems to do what a family SUV like this should do for the most part. There are some elements that maybe could be better. Firstly, I think that the hybrid powertrain is really useful and usable. And obviously, because you've got EV driving mode, in that mode, it does have heaps of grunt. It's not the fastest, it's not like a Tesla Model Y performance or anything like that, but that's obvious. It's still very quick to accelerate. And the urgency that you get from the EV drive mode really does come to the fore in stop-start situations in traffic, or if you're just going to overtake, it still feels punchy enough. And in hybrid mode, yep, it's still punchy. It'll use a combination of the petrol engine and the electric motors to push you along, and it's quick. Like, it's definitely quick enough. And hey, it's not a super dynamic SUV to drive. The steering is quite light and it doesn't really have any feel at all. So it's not as direct or as accurate feeling as some other vehicles in this segment. And if you are after a more joyful experience, there are other options out there that might tick the box for you. But for a family SUV that's just going to be spending its time doing what I'm doing, driving around town right now, I think that it will be perfectly amenable to your needs and perfectly livable in terms of the steering feel and responsiveness too. But I will also add that if you are more of a driving enthusiast and you are interested in having a car that feels a bit more confident on the road, upgrading the tires would be something that I think would be an easy way to improve the drive experience here. The GT tires that are fitted to this, they're not terrific. They don't necessarily feel as grippy as they could when you are turning corners. So yeah, that'd be something that I would personally look to improve straight away if I bought this car. But I also think that some people, I've read reviews of this car from other outlets and they've criticized the fact that it feels a bit soggy and a bit soft feeling in terms of the suspension. I actually think that's to this car's credit. Look, it's not perfect in terms of the ride, but what it is comfortable and definitely usable in city situations or urban driving, and that's where these cars are going to spend most of their lives. And like, I just did my big 100k loop and I didn't have any issues with the ride per se, apart from the fact that at times over sharp bumps it can feel just a little bit clumsy in terms of the way that it behaves itself, but it's livable in my opinion. And honestly, the livability is the thing that I keep coming back to with this experience. I just think that this could be one of the most easy to live with plug-in hybrid vehicles on the market, because you do have the assuredness of so much EV driving range capability. You might not even need to plug it in every single night if you just do a shorter commute to work or to drop the kids off or whatever. So I think that that is the thing that's standing out most. And from that perspective, I don't think there's anything better than this in terms of just being able to tick the box for long EV driving range and livable driving experience to the car as well. It's, yeah, I like it a lot. At the time I'm filming this, there is no applicable ANCAP rating for the Sealion 6. The BYD Sealion, the electric version, which is sold in Europe, did achieve the maximum 5-star Euro ANCAP rating though, and I would expect that given that car did, this car probably will achieve the top score as well, and it has heaps of standard safety technology and equipment in order to do that. Things like autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian and cyclist detection. There's lane keeping and emergency lane keeping, a little bit pushy but not too bad in this car. There's also a road sign recognition system, so it'll tell you if the speed sign changes. It's a little bit frustrating, but I actually lived with it on this time, and I actually didn't get too frustrated. I have in other cars in the past. Maybe the beep in this car is just a little bit more likable, so that's something to keep in mind. It's also got other great technology like blind spot monitoring, front cross traffic alert and rear cross traffic alert. There's rear auto braking as well, and you also get a surround view camera system as standard, front and rear parking sensors as standard, and there's plenty more beyond that. And when it comes to airbags, you've got 7 dual front side, a front center airbag between the front seats, and also curtain coverage for both rows. Yeah, tick in the box. BYD offers a 6-year 150,000 kilometre warranty in Australia, and also the battery pack is covered by an 8-year 160,000 kilometre warranty, which is decent, I reckon. Now, when it comes to servicing, you've got a 10-year 200,000 kilometre capped price servicing plan. Your first service is due at 6 months or 3,500 Ks. It's a free checkup just to see how things are going. Then your service intervals are every 12 months and 20,000 kilometres. Now, over that 10-year plan, I'll put the average price for the front-wheel drive model on your screen now. And then, yes, if you choose the all-wheel drive, you're paying more to get the car, you pay more to maintain it as well, but it's not a huge amount more expensive to keep the all-wheel drive version on the road. All versions come with 12 months of free roadside assistance, but you have to pay for yourself to top it up after the first 12 months. I think this could be the most compelling new vehicle I've driven in 2024, because if you're not sold on full EV and you don't necessarily think that a regular hybrid is going to cut it for you, it stacks up brilliantly for the money, and the fact that you've got almost 100 Ks of EV driving range available and real world efficiency, plus all this tech and all the spec for this kind of cash. It's hard to pass up, in my opinion. Tell me what you think in the comments section below. Would you pick it, or would you go for one of those other options or a full EV? I'd love to hear from you. If you've already subscribed, thanks very much. I'll see you in the next one.